Is there we go. Okay.
Not seeing anything over here yet.
It's usually behind by about 20 seconds.
Oh, there we go. You're up.
Okay, cool. All right. Hopefully everybody can see us. We're
Think so.
we're trying to stream. Let's see. We've got the chat. I don't. I can see it, but I won't be able to keep both things on the screen at once. So, yeah. Okay. Is it showing on your screen, B? No.
Maybe I have to sign in?
I don't think so. You've got it up on yours, though, Scott.
I do. I have
Okay.
it up over here, and you've got the stream settings. You've kind of got me in a. We're in a window up there right
Well, yeah,
now.
I'm looking. I'm looking at the stream setup box. It should
There you
switch
go.
back. Yeah, it should.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm switching
Yeah.
back
So
and
now
forth
we're
because I've just got one monitor.
right. We're full screen on the two of us now.
Okay, yeah, cool. Well, I guess we can get started. I mean, if you're seeing it and it's changing, that's good. My wife's not seeing it over here on her side, but that's okay.
Let's see. Put some
Now
light on
she
the sun.
refreshed. Now she's got it. So good. Okay. Yeah, I've just got
Wow.
light coming in the window over here, so that's going to change over time, but that's
Now
fine.
my light over window's kind of messing with things, and so I'm trying to put more light in front of me here.
You look all right on my
Popped on
side,
my
just so you know.
popped
But
up my ring light.
all right, well, let me just do an intro real quick because I know everybody's kind of waiting for this to start, and I just heard my cuckoo clock strike 3, so it's got to be close. Uh, I am the open source advocate, and we are back with another video for the end of the year, and with me is Scott from Scottabyte, so super excited to do this. He and I have been talking about doing this for like 3 months, I think, and schedules have just not linked up, so I'm excited, Scott. It's good to finally get to do this here at the end of the year and maybe have a little discussion about open source and infrastructure and IT and things to look forward to in 2024.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it here, Brian. I think that a lot of folks are asking a lot of questions, doing a lot of new things, and there's some excitement on the horizon in 2024 for sure.
Absolutely. I I was fortunate enough to be a part of a podcast. I posted about it on social media and stuff. It's called Mechanical Inc. Podcast, and he covers all kinds of things open source and his outlook towards it too as we go forward, especially with AI and things like that, really becoming bigger topics. Is that open source will hopefully start to really dominate in a lot of the software marketplace, and I think with AI especially when you talk about privacy and data privacy and security, that just becomes an even bigger issue than it was for me before. I mean, I use Facebook to post my videos, and really that's almost it. I get on there occasionally to announce something to my family because that's where they are. Twitter is just a place where I post my videos now. I really don't even get on Twitter anymore. You know, all the ones that are proprietary kind of self-owned things. I mean, I'm there because I have a channel, and if I didn't have this channel, I probably wouldn't be there at all. Um, I have told people, it's funny that as Americans, a lot of times we get angry because the government says, well, I want to know everything about you. And people say, well, that goes against my rights, it goes against the Bill of Rights. But what's funny is the government doesn't even have to say that anymore, right? They just have to go online and look at your social media, and they can find out everything about you. I mean, they'll know what you had for breakfast. They'll know what time you went to bed, what time you woke up, when you took your dog for a walk. I mean, I used to, as an ex-police officer, I told people social media is the greatest thing in the world for criminals because anybody that wants to know when you're not home can find out when you're not home because everybody posts everything that they're doing all the time, and they're like, well, I mean, oh, you're at the mall, okay, I'm gonna go take all your stuff out of your house real quick or kick in your door and see what's going on. So for me, privacy's become a huge thing, especially with my family. I want to make sure that my kids are as protected as they can be, that my wife, my parents are as protected as they can be. So for me, open source has been really a great way to take back the control of our data and try to minimize that online footprint a little bit. I mean, I don't think you can get completely away from it because of the services that are out there today, but I think in the last 5 years, it's just gotten incredible what you can do for yourself and host for yourself and kind of keep your data for yourself. I mean, I know you self-host a lot of things too, and I mean, like what things have you kind of said I want to take back control today, and you're self-hosting, like that's your big thing.
Well, I think one of the things that you brought up here about the family privacy was a big deal. So I think it was about 2 years ago that I had a chat with some family members, and it was over Facebook Messenger. And that's usually where we tagged up just because it was convenient. And I guess there were about 6 or 8 of us. And in the process of having that discussion, we talked about a few products. And it was like 2 days later, we all tagged up again, and every single person said, "Hey, did you happen to get email and also advertisements on your web browser related to this particular product that we talked about?" And we all acknowledged that we did. And it was very obvious that the data from our Facebook Messenger chat was being mined. So, we thought that's kind of a little invasive. It's nice to have targeted advertising to a degree, but sometimes when you're having a discussion, it's like exactly how much data are they mining from it? So as a result of that particular instance, I already had a Rocket Chat server set up for the channel over here. And so consequently, I set up a private chat channel for one side of the family, and another private chat channel for the other side of the family. And we use it, and everybody likes it real well. It's convenient. It was also a little bit better way to tie people together that happen to be on Android and people that were on iPhones. Because before, if we were trying to SMS, things weren't always exactly great. But now sending multimedia, such as videos or pictures or text chat or whatever we happen to come up with, it all just works. And the fact that it's all local, we have the history. We can look back in the history anytime we want and keep as much history as we want or delete it. That really mattered. So that's a good example of what you were talking about.
That's an awesome example of what I'm talking about. Actually, I mean that. You know, it's funny you say that because my mom had been looking for 5 or 6 years ago before moving into this house. She had just been actually looking for insurance. She was retired, and insurance, when you retire, is more expensive because you don't have a company footing a lot of the bill for you. Um, and she was just looking around online, but she suddenly got a phone call, like to her cell phone, from somebody. She hadn't put in any information. She hadn't filled out any forms or anything, and they called her and said, "Hey, we noticed you were looking at insurance." And they were able to tie it all together between her different social media profiles to figure out, here's her phone number, here's who this was, and here's their phone number. And this guy called, and that was great because he gave her lots of information, right? It turned out to be a good thing in this case, but it was also a little bit creepy that, like, she didn't fill any forms out, but because she was logged into a couple of those services that she was using, when she did that, they were able to get to her phone number and call her and tell her, you know, like, hey, we saw you were looking for insurance. We were hoping we could help you, right? That, well, it turns out to be an okay thing, like you said, some targeted advertising. That's still kind of a creepy idea that can happen to you. So yeah, I mean, for me, data privacy is huge. I set up Matrix this last summer for one of my videos, and I liked it. I really liked it when I set it up the first time a few years ago. But the Dendrite server has been such a lightweight server and so easy to keep running. I've really enjoyed it. And so I went ahead and set up some private chat rooms and things like that, and made it where you can't sign up for my server. You have to add you through the command line. But I added my wife and my girls and my mom and several people from the family, just so that we can have our own chat and our own private chat. We use Telegram as a backup. I'm not super wild about Telegram, but it does a little better. At least I don't get weird ads. I haven't yet, anyways. Knock on wood. But it is running on my server in my house, right? My infrastructure. So when the internet goes down, we don't have access to our Matrix chat server. Now I could 100% go put that on a VPS, but federated applications tend to start using a lot of data when you get federated. So as you federate to other servers, that pulls in those bits of data depending on how they do that federation, especially. And Matrix is one of those. So you could jump from using, a few hundred megabytes to using tens of gigabytes of data all of a sudden just by adding somebody else's server to your server because you wanted to join a chat channel or talk about something that had a Matrix setup. So I want to be a little cautious with that with VPS, just because that can really increase your cost overall. But Yeah, I mean, 100%. I love having my own server that I run that I'm using for my family. Of course, I have the Rocket Chat server for the channel, which is incredible. It has been such a great communication tool. You're on my channel, you know, I'm on my Rocket Chat a lot of times answering questions for people. There's several guys in there that are always helping out and answering people or trying to help out. When I see discussions really going, if I get a few minutes, I try to jump in. It's usually at night, right before bed, but I'll try to jump in and see what's going on, get caught up, try to throw in some thoughts or answers if I can. But yeah, it's been a great method of communication, and honestly, the company Rocket Chat has just been knocking it out of the park. And in fact, you got on this last year for me and updated my Rocket Chat server because I'd let it sit for quite a long time and I was having a hard time with it. So I appreciate that. By the way, it was kicking me in the butt, and every time I did, it just failed, and I was kind of getting miserable. So I appreciate you jumping on and doing that because I really like. Sometimes I feel like I sit down. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I feel like I've got 2 hours, and the next thing I know, I'm looking up, I'm like, I'm out of time. Like, all I've been doing is reading about how do I want to get started, and suddenly I'm out of time again. So it is super helpful to have folks like you just out there and willing to help. I mean, just incredible. And I know you said earlier that a lot of people, who follow my instructions will get things both mostly up and running, but then they'll have some kind of infrastructure issue and they reach out to you for some help, which I think is incredible. That one, you're willing to help them. You've got that time to jump in and say, here, let's look at what you've got and help them get things straightened out. But that's the great thing about your channel. I think is that your channel, my channel and your channel complement each other. Honestly, it's one of those things where you're giving them some really great infrastructure. I love watching your LXD videos, and I have this testing server that I've got behind me. It's a Proxmox server right now, but I think in the next few months I'll have some time, I hope, but I want to blow that away. It's just a testing server, and I want to install, I think, a Ubuntu base with the 2404 when it comes out, and LXD, and I'm going to get you to get on there and help me kind of get things squared away and set up, and maybe we'll make a few videos out of that we can kind of both post. But I'm kind of looking to look at some of these tools that they have for LXD that are coming out. And then, of course, they've got Incus, which I was really getting excited about LXD and just about to do it. You made the videos about Incus, and I was like, oh, come on, man. I was just ready to go, and now you're telling me there's something else.
Yeah, that's been a big thing. As a matter of fact, yesterday I posted a Q&A that I had with a couple of the guys that are real active on my channel. And we had a discussion in regards to what is going on with Canonical and LXD and with Incus and linuxcontainers.org. And so we had a pretty interesting discussion. If anyone is interested in it, they certainly should go out there and watch that on the Scottabyte channel. So there's something I'd like to get your perspective about, because I think it's something that people might, watching our channels, misunderstand a little bit. And that is that they might be under the impression that we use all open source software and that we never use any cloud services. And nothing could be farther from the truth. We actually do use cloud services. It's just that the tendency is to minimize the use of cloud services. And for me, one of the things that motivated me towards self-hosting in the home lab was the fact that I had a lot of instances where the best way to describe it is a cloud service would make a change. And when that cloud service would make a change, it would have a ripple down effect, which would affect everything inside the home lab. And I needed the cloud service, and it was out there, but they made a change to it. And the problem is most cloud services don't really give you any idea of when changes are going to be made. They don't really necessarily give you release notes for them. A good example are Google services and Amazon services. So both of those are used pretty readily by the majority of people now that have a home network. And when they make changes, a lot of things will have a ripple down effect. I mean, if you're just using the real basics, that's fine. But if you're a more advanced user, like the people that watch our channels are, then they're doing integration with these cloud-based services, and breakages in those or changes in those cloud-based services have that ripple down effect to the home lab. So You mentioned earlier something that I also is near and dear to my heart, and it's the idea of AI. And what I'm hoping for is I'm hoping that eventually we'll have some companies come out with essentially kind of a black box AI server that you can base in your house that will run things like automations and do other types of things for you, and basically offload the cloud to some degree, because the more things you do on the cloud, the worse it is. Point in fact, cameras. I know you and I both have cameras. Well, I do all of my camera recording locally, and Xfinity is my internet service provider, and they have a monthly cap of 1.2 terabytes or 1,200 gigabytes, which I pass every single month. And I'm not doing cameras over the web, and I'm not transmitting this information. But still, there's an awful lot of traffic. Some of which is through self-hosting. Others is we do a lot of streaming at home. We watch all kinds of streaming services. It's just a thing. Hey, retired people, we get in trouble.
That's right. I agree. I do try to. I mean, everything I can, I run as open source software. I do use and I pay for Apple's iCloud storage service. I think it's the 2 terabyte version. I can't remember for sure, but it's enough so that I know it'll back up my phone, my wife's phone, my girls' phones. We all have iPhones because one, it's easy for me if they have a problem because it's the same operating system. There's not a lot of customization to it. So when they have a problem, I can help them. Even if I'm on the phone with them, I can help them. And I like things like that because I am the guy that they come to when they have those issues. So for me that's important, and I do like having I have Nextcloud. I back up a lot of our data right to my Nextcloud server, but it's here in the house, and that kind of breaks that 3-2-1 rule for backup. So for me, having that iCloud storage is part of that 3-2-1 of I know that it's backed up to iCloud. So even if something happens in my home where my data is lost, I've still got that backup of data up there. Most of my family is on Macs. I'm slowly switching everybody to Linux. My girls use Linux. I use Linux. My wife likes Linux, but she also likes her Macs, so she has those. But where it's Macs, I back those up to iCloud as well, just because again, it's that whole concept of having a 3-2-1 backup strategy, and I want to make sure that I'm doing that to the best of my ability. And Apple makes that very easy. It doesn't feel expensive to me. I think it's $10 a month for 2 terabytes of storage. There may be less expensive options, and there's definitely options out there, but the storage space that it takes to run that, I guess, the redundancy that I know that they have, that if you want to have 2 terabytes of storage, you shouldn't just have 2 terabytes on a DigitalOcean droplet, right? They have object storage. AWS has object storage. They all have object storage. So if you're looking for that, you can do it yourself. But if you want 2 terabytes of cloud backup, you shouldn't have just 2 terabytes. You should have what? Double that, 4 terabytes. And you should be constantly having that data synced between those two sets of object storage to make sure that if there's a problem on one of those things, you're not losing that data. You're not dependent on a single place. And I know that places like Apple, Microsoft, Google, AWS, you get that redundancy capability. You get that either built in or you have the ability to set it up and make sure it's there. And I'm not saying you don't have that in DigitalOcean, but when you start talking about 4 terabytes of storage, that can get to be a pretty hefty price tag with some of the VPS providers. So for me, that is a cloud service that's worth it. I'd love to one day have my own my own setup where I could run it.
I'm kind of an advocate for private cloud also. And so what private cloud means is a little confusing for some people. So when we think about things like NAS, we think about data storage. But now NAS is expanded much more broadly. So arguably, everybody would look at like free NAS or open NAS and say that's a NAS. But on the other hand, you might even look at Proxmox or VMware and say that it's a NAS as well. And the reason is the lines have been blurred. So now these devices are not only just storage servers, but they're application servers. And a really good example of this backup or replication sort of thing taking place is I have a my retirement manager has an office. And in that office, I put in a private cloud server. And I've got a site-to-site VPN between his office and his home. And over that site-to-site VPN, I do real-time replication uh, for his critical data. And at the same time, I also do snapshots at his source. And I also do versioning with the last 5 versions. So we've got versioning, we've got snapshots, and we got offsite all occurring in one fell swoop. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing is really important. I I kind of tend away from cloud services. For a while I used AWS, and I'll tell you, everybody that has ever used AWS will always tell you they've got great services, but you end up it's just like it's like an addiction. You keep adding more and more services or more storage, and pretty soon you look at what your monthly bill is, and it's like terrifying.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there are the cases that you do want to have that private cloud backup. Certainly, what you're doing with the iPhones is a really great idea, especially for the cost. That's wonderful, and it protects you from ever losing any data. And as long as you know that the data that you're replicating to these cloud services is secure, I mean, either you're encrypting it or something else, then that's really a good thing. I've gotten to the point where um, a lot of people will buy a public VPN service, and I've gotten to the point where when I travel, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or a phone, it's always connected to a VPN. But the VPN it's connected to is my home VPN.
Yep.
So I'm always on my home network, no matter where I am. And that basically means that my communication is not exposed to whatever Wi-Fi network I'm on or whatever public telephone network, data network I'm on. And that works out really well.
And it's a great topic, right? VPNs, and I want to cover more of them in 2024 because 2023 was a good year for WireGuard VPNs. I covered NetMaker, I covered Tailscale and Headscale, and I covered NetBird, and they're all terrific. They've got really great interfaces. In the past, I've covered PryTunnel, I've covered WireGuard. Like if you just want to use the CLI to set it up, you can. I mean, it's not super complicated, but it is a little bit heavier for some people. But the tools a lot of people are looking for is for business level tools where they want to be to have single sign on and people can get in and use the VPN that way, and they have access control lists, and that's what these newer groups are providing out there, right? And it's great. But like for me and my family, just what you said, when we travel and we stay in a hotel, of course my mom wants to get on the Wi-Fi with her iPad, so the first thing I did was say, okay, but we have to set up a VPN. She goes, well, what's that? I mean, it is really so easy these days to give that to somebody you care about and tell them, here, I installed it. It's this icon. All you have to do is touch it and then click the little on button and then it'll tell you when you're connected, and then you can go do whatever you want to do, and it's all being encrypted. It can connect back to your home VPN server if that's what you want. You can do it through a cloud service if that's what you want, but 100%, like on public Wi-Fi, I don't care if you're using HTTPS for your website, you should never, ever, ever, ever connect to public Wi-Fi without a VPN connection ready to go, because it's a man-in-the-middle attack waiting to happen. I mean, it just doesn't matter where you are. I've stayed at Hilton's forever because I traveled for my work. And here in the U.S., it was always H Honors was the name of the SSID, or ATT Wi-Fi. That was it. There was no other option. The last time we went to a Hilton, my daughter said, hey, I'm going to get on the Wi-Fi, and she attached to one that said Hilton Honors spelled out. And I freaked out. I was like, I've never seen it spelled out like that. So I had to go and look like in the little card they give you when you check in, and it actually did say, yes, it's spelled out. So I was like, oh my God, I thought she connected to a hotspot or somebody was honeypotting her in, trying to get a man in the middle going on. And I was like, okay, stop, turn everything off, let me check this, But it does. Like I really, I mean, those places are just a bad thing waiting to happen if you don't have a VPN. So yeah, I mean, what you said is exactly what I do. I run my own VPN. I make sure that they have a simple app that they can just easily open it, turn it on, and I make sure that they understand, like, when they're on public Wi-Fi, this is what you do. And when they say, what's public Wi-Fi, I tell them it doesn't matter. Just any Wi-Fi that's not here at home, turn it on. And that's an easy rule for them to follow, you know.
That's true. So, I think 2024, from the point of view, one of my main subjects that I really talk about on the Scottabyte channel all the time are everything connected to and involved with containers.
Yep.
And of course, so far, I probably have over 100 videos on various aspects of LXD. And LXD and Incus, of course, are beginning a split. Actually, it was that Incus was a fork of LXD, and a true fork always usually benefits from upstream. And now, because of some decisions that have been made on behalf of Canonical, that's no longer going to be the case. So the two projects may end up diverging pretty quickly. But the point is in 2023, the majority of companies that were out there still really used virtual machines in their infrastructure. And a lot of the people I talk to who come to the channel, their first question is a lot of times, what is a container? Because they're so used to using a virtual machine. Yep. And so the thing is, with the virtual machines, realize that all of the hardware gets virtualized. And so they have a higher degree of overhead, both in terms of memory and in terms of CPU. Whereas containers, since they share the kernel of the host operating system, they always have a much lighter footprint. And so consequently, you can do a lot more with them. As a matter of fact, I like to show people that I have a little bitty server that fits in the palm of my hand. It's a mini PC. It's running on a Ryzen 5, and it has 32 gigs of memory, and it's using about half of that, and it's running 24 LXD containers on it. And in fact, the Jitsi server that we're using is running on that right now.
That is awesome. And I love that you brought that up, because 2024, one of the things, so I've got these back, I know you can't see it, but back behind me over here in the corner, you can probably hear it a little bit, but I've got these really big servers that, a couple years ago I said I'm going to save up, I'm going to buy a server. I bought a used RX 730. I think that's what it is, RX 730. Yeah, something like R730XD, maybe, I can't remember. But it had like 24 little 2.5 inch drive bays in it. And it's got 256 gigs of RAM, which is great. It's a ton of RAM, and I run a ton of stuff on it. But it's a power hog. It has two gigantic, 750 watt power supplies that are running all the time too. So I'm using, a huge amount of power to run that thing. Same thing. I got a couple of servers from a viewer right after I got that one, maybe 6 months, and one is running my TrueNAS stuff, and the other one's my test server for Proxmox, where I do a lot of my videos. And they're all power hogs. They're great, and I love having them, and they make it really easy for me to run my stuff. But one of the things in 2024 I think I'm going to start doing is looking at how do I move to something like what you just talked about, a Ryzen 5 mini PC that would be less power hungry, but has plenty of resources for me to run a lot of the things that I'm running, and maybe move to a few of those. Because one of the things I was thinking is, when I have a power outage, I would love to be able to have like just a good sized battery bank. It doesn't have to be the biggest battery bank in the world, but something that would run those machines for a couple of hours till the company can get the power fixed. And, keep my internet running with my ISP, my routers running, and my servers running, so that I've still got connectivity even if the power goes out. For me, that's a huge thing, because it goes out occasionally around here. But it never fails that's also when you're trying to send a message on Matrix, or you're trying to get something done, and I could get it done from my phone or my tablet if those servers were running. So for 2024, I think it's one of the moves I'll be making, is kind of changing my infrastructure and talking about how I'm doing it.
I think one of our huge limiting factors that both you and I have is called South Texas.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the major part of the year, getting power to whatever servers we have, even if they're very low power servers, and the aforementioned servers, when they're running full bore, they're doing about 34 watts. And when they're idling, they're doing something like 12 to 14 watts, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, but the downside is the air conditioning. And so, as a really good example, I have a bedroom that's just off to the left of me here, and it is my quote computer room. And so I have a rack of equipment in there. And the funny part about it is my wife actually also puts all the chocolates in there because she said, I want them in the room where they won't melt.
Nice.
And so we have things in there like that. It's turned out to be a secondary pantry, it seems like. But that room has got a 12,000 BTU mini split, and it's only like a 12 by 12 bedroom. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it needs that because in the summertime here, especially this summer in Texas, and I don't need to tell you, we had probably something like 45 days of over 100 degrees straight.
Yep.
And so consequently, we're keeping our houses around 80 degrees because that's like 25 or 30 degrees less than outside. But computers don't really like 80 degrees because if your ambient temperature in the room is 80 degrees, then inside your rack it's 90 degrees. And inside the, like in a drive, it's maybe 100 degrees, and on the surface of a component that's in that drive, it's more like 110 degrees.
Yeah.
So, and that's real typical as I look at the drive temperatures of these things. So consequently, this mini split, I keep that room at like 65 degrees. And you might laugh about that, but my main NAS has 100 terabytes of storage, and there's nothing that will warm a room up faster than spinning drives. As a matter of fact, with our cool weather here, I haven't had to turn the heat on. I just opened the computer room door.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in an office that we built on the house, and it's probably 12 by 15. It's not huge, but I never have to turn on the heater in here. I can just turn down the air conditioner if it's cooling it too much. But I mean, it was 30 something, below freezing this morning for Fahrenheit scale. It's 32 is freezing, so it was like 30 something. Pretty cold for here in the morning. Now it's going to be like 75 Fahrenheit this afternoon, but I don't have to turn on the heater in here. The servers keep it to the point where it actually feels a little bit warm a lot of times in here, so the air conditioner kicks in even in the wintertime to cool it off. It's just, yeah, it's amazing how much heat those things generate, and it's crazy how much they generate at the same time. So yeah, I'm really looking to downsize a little bit on that and try to get something a little bit more energy efficient. As I move forward, that's my goal anyways with new hardware purchases. We'll see how well I do in trying to actually do that. But I see things like what I got my wife and the girls for Christmas. I got them a Steam Deck. That's a powerful machine. I mean, that's a Linux computer running on a tiny frame with controls built around it for gaming, and it's got some serious graphical power and some serious gaming power. So I think, okay, if they can do this on something that'll run on batteries for several hours, this is a totally doable goal that I have. It's not something where I have to go out and spend ungodly amounts of money to find something that small. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about getting into the smaller server space in 24 for sure. I think my network, I'll probably cover some more network topics, but OpenWRT has been just kicking the crap out of it for me for networking this year. I went through several changes throughout the year. You kind of followed what I was doing. I think you had a few ideas for me to try at different times, and I tried the Omada, which is kind of the TP-Link version of Unify stuff, and it was fine. It was nice. It was one, as everybody says, one pane of glass to see my entire network, but it just, something was weird about it, and I could never run down what it was, and it just didn't function correctly, and then things would just stop working, and of course I get the calls from all the way across the house about the internet's down. Okay, Emily, let me see what's going on, and no, it's not the internet, it's just the network adapter you're connected to for some reason, and I took all that hardware and just moved it over to OpenWRT and kind of revamped everything, and it took me about a day to get that done, and when it was done, I've really had almost no issues with it. I have it set to do just a reboot once a week. It reboots itself in the middle of the night while everybody's asleep. Occasionally, Home Assistant or one of my Wi-Fi based devices for Home Assistant won't reconnect correctly, but usually if I just go flick the switch, the hard switch for those things, it'll reconnect on its own after that. Um, I think that's more of an issue with the device than it is with the network for sure, because everything's got static addresses. Everything is set in a way that it's pretty much reproducible, which is great. But yeah, I think for 24, my goal is keep my network the same and quit messing with it, so I don't
I
break
think
things.
I think that's admirable, and I have to second that because about 3 weeks ago I did a major network change, and in fact, when all the gear came in, my wife looked at me and and I had received a bunch of it from a very good friend of mine, and she said, "You know what he's going to get for Christmas is a voodoo doll." And I want a lock of his hair. And I was like,
Oh
okay.
man,
And so, because she knows she always has to help me in some degree when I'm trying to put these things together. But about 3 weeks ago, I went to I do have a unified network, as you point out. And I went to a 10 gig backbone. And at this point, I've got about 108 switch ports, 6 VLANs, and right around 70 or 80 wired clients and probably about 50 or 60 wireless clients. But that notwithstanding, since you mentioned Home Assistant, realize that we also have a Zigbee network and a Z-Wave network. And
nice.
now, increasingly so in homes and home automation, we're starting to actually see Bluetooth networks being used.
And
And
matter,
that's
because you know,
and Matter is
yeah.
fantastic. Now, I wanted to circle back here for a minute, and I also wanted to mention a little bit about the mini PC. Something very exciting is going to be happening in 2024, and that is that both some South Korean companies, as well as some Taiwanese companies, are going to be releasing some new mini PC motherboards that we're going to see.
Nice.
And they're going to finally break the 64 gigabyte barrier. So you'll be able to have, I think, 128 and perhaps 256 gigs of memory, which really does matter when you're starting to do this container virtualization, because long your pain point, if you will, is not really the networking. Although I have to point out that all of the newer machines now do have 2.5 gigabit NICs in them. And I
Yep.
really encourage people out there, if they don't have a 2.5 gigabit switch on their infrastructures, certainly move in that direction, because more and more of the machines are going to be 2.5 gig.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing I would have to say is that as we uh, as we start to see uh, these new machines come out, the pain point is not the network. It's not really even the CPU power. It just turns out to be the amount of memory you have. And
Yep.
point in fact, I'm really amazed. I'll tell people here, I have another one of those little mini PCs out there. I have 64 gigs of memory on it, but it is running 24 containers that are much larger, and it's running 3 VMs. One of those VMs is for Home Assistant. Another VM is a Windows 11 VM that has eight gigabytes dedicated to it. And the third one, I believe, is like an Ubuntu desktop. But on that machine, I'm using right around 60% of that 64 gigs of memory. And yet, all those things are running fantastically on a little Ryzen 5 3550H, which is a mobile Ryzen processor.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so excited for smaller, more energy efficient hardware. I'm in this room, and I know you can't see everything around me, but back here I've got two desks, and you can see the monitors. So each one of those is a PC for my girls that they use. My wife's is to the right of me, which is a iMac. I've got my work desk over here to the left of me, which has got two giant monitors and two laptops that work in clamshell mode next to each other. I'm running off of a gaming desktop that I've got here. I've got the three servers in the back corner, and that's just this room. So as you spread out into the rest of my house, it just gets worse and worse. Yeah, there you go. Nice.
So there's the
Yeah.
computer slash junk room there, real time, and You know, that's that the two minis forums are the two little boxes there that are kind of at the bottom,
Nice.
and uh, and then I've got the NAS there that's got about 100 terabytes on it, and then of course the plethora of switches as you can see,
Oh yeah,
and so it
that's
gets
awesome.
it gets pretty crazy after a while,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
that's really awesome.
kind of in addition to that, I've got you know I was getting ready to put a 10 gig NIC in my desktop because I do a lot of iSCSI. In fact, I've done a couple of videos about how to set up iSCSI with both Windows and Linux. And so consequently, I have here in my hand a couple of fiber SFPs that are going to be
Nice.
used to connect my switch that's sitting next to me to my desktop PC.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, I think 2024 for open source. I'm I'm excited because there's so many great projects out there. Um, anytime I do videos, I try to make sure that I remember to show the pricing pages for any open source projects. And I always get those comments, a few comments, right? Well, I can't believe that people are calling this open source, but then you have to pay for it. Again, I think they lose the track on just because it's open source doesn't mean it should be free, like free, free beer, right? It's not free as in money. Free and open source means free as in freedom, the freedom to do with the software what you want, modify it, give it to other people, those kind of things. But for a company to say, hey, we need to make money to keep going, makes total sense. And I want the projects that I love to keep going, so I try to make sure that I always mention their pricing and how you can support them and things like that. And I support, I don't know, it's got to be 10 or 12 different projects at this point. And a lot of that money comes from my YouTube channel, which is great. For my Patreon patrons, it's awesome. The big thing for me in 24 though is really finding those bits of software that I think people could put together to start an MSP business, because I think that's where a lot of my customers come from, is that they're looking for those types of solutions and they're looking for, how do I put this together. So what I'm going to be trying to put together is a series on that, where you're using something like Authentic or Citadel as kind of your single authentication provider for all these different pieces of software to make them blend a little bit better together, so you don't have 12 different logins that you have to use to get on these different things. But Mesh Central, I still think, is an incredible product for being RMM type software, where you've got the remote access, the remote control, the remote desktop, the remote terminal, really letting you group those things and have multiple users with different permissions, that kind of stuff. I think there's some really great software out there for running your business, because I think people get into MSP because they're techie and they like tech, but they forget about that there's a business side of that you have to keep up with if you want to be successful. There's a channel, and I've linked to it, I think, over on my community. It's a guy who talks about how to be successful with an MSP. He's using closed source software and online offerings and things like that, but the information he gives is very valuable, and the information he gives is very accurate about, you have to be a salesman, you have to be a business person, you have to line up those opportunities to sell your services to people, and then you have to make sure that you're successful with the way you provide those services to people. And you can't afford to drive from site to site anymore. You have to be able to do 98% of the work remote. And if you don't set yourself up with the right tools and software for that, you're probably not going to be successful, because you're going to spend all your time driving around trying to get to different sites where they're needing your help, and it's going to fail. But I'm excited because I think the open source space is there. I think the software is there. I think the services are there. I think you could start absolutely using it all yourself, self-hosted, for free. I think as you grow as an MSP, if you're successful, it's going to be valuable to you to know that most of these things offer a hosted version where they will help you run the infrastructure so that you can run your business and serve your clients. I think that's a huge part of it. But I just from the questions I get from people, from the types of comments I get from people, I feel like a lot of my audience, even if they're beginners, are still looking like, how do I get into this for a job and a career? And I've had a few tell me like, hey, you've helped me with my career, you've helped me move my career forward, which is awesome. I'm glad I can do that. But at the same time, I want to make sure I'm giving people the information they're looking for to be successful. So I think 2024 is going to be a pretty big focus on that type of open source software for me. I'm still gonna pick out the apps that I just love, that I can't that I can't get my hands off of just because they're great. And there's a lot of them that come up and that I find that are out there that I'm excited about. But yeah, I mean, 24 for you. What is it? What is it looking like for your channel?
Well, I was going to say that to address something you said earlier, I think that companies had not really used open source to a great degree in the past several years, moving back. And part of the reason for that is because they're risk adverse and they are concerned about possible liabilities. And now I think the model for software is changing from software that is being sold by companies, closed source software, to more of an open source model. And part of the reason for that is because um, now the way that companies are making money is through SaaS, software as a service.
Yep.
And so the whole idea of selling an individual piece of software to a company is kind of going away, and selling an ongoing software service, kind of like keeping a retainer on board for whatever it is, really does matter. And to address your other thing that you pointed out, um, which was about the, how can I put this, the way that companies look at IT. So you have to realize that in the past, and certainly for 30 years or so, IT has always been viewed as a cost center by most of the company. And the issue is, you're working for a good company if that company views IT as a profit center. And the way it can be used as a profit center is if the IT person that is in there is knowledgeable of the business and understands the business acumen that's involved. And that's why a lot of
100%.
companies now have people in IT that are called business relationship managers. Just going out there and understanding how to use all the tech and play tech doesn't cut it anymore. The thing that cuts it is if you understand how to leverage that tech to make the company more profitable, because the bottom line is money.
Yep.
And then
100%.
I guess to answer your question about where I see my channel coming in 2024. So I guess I'm on 3 years now, and boy, I'll tell you what, getting started in YouTube channel, just so everybody knows out here, it can be really brutal. I mean, brutal. And the definition of brutal is you first of all have to learn all the tools, figure out how you do things. Before I ever made my first video, I probably sat down for about 8 or 9 months just trying to learn how to use the tools. And bottom line, anybody that's watched the channel knows that I do things pretty much in a tutorial fashion. There's no glitz. It's not fancy. All I hope for is a really clear mic and really clear video. And then I try to back up everything I say by telling them what I'm going to tell them, telling them, and then telling them what I've told them, and then having very accurate show notes that have been tested over and over again to make sure that they work the first time. So I think that a lot of people tend to look at your channel because they see an application, they get really excited going, wow, this is really super. I want to run this. And point in fact is there were a couple of people that hit my channel. I thought it was really hilarious. They said, so we watched your video on how to create a Windows 11 LXD virtual machine, and I'm having trouble trying to get it running. And so the bottom line was, after I talked to them for a little bit, they were trying to get their Windows 11 virtual machine running on their Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gigs of memory. And they had LXD running just fine on it, and it would work great. But I had to explain to them that unfortunately, it was kind of going to require a x86 architecture and not an ARM architecture to run that version of Windows. Going forward, maybe he was a forward thinker, because keep in mind, 2024 will bring to the table an ARM-based Windows. So, and I think as far as the future, I think that we're going to have a lot more desktops and servers that may be massively parallel arm. And the reason for that is because the whole idea of multi-threading, the whole idea of virtualization is really going to expand. I keep thinking, oh, I've done a video on everything I can do on LXD. And I turn around and realize, no, that's not true at all. And I realize that there's virtual storage, there are virtual networks, and there are virtual containers. And I try to tie them all together and explain what the differences are. One of the big things on the channel, which I keep going back to constantly, is kind of fascinating. And that is that people don't really necessarily understand why I have them set up a server, and then on that server, I make the main NIC a virtual bridge.
Yep.
And so, and it's so basically you can serve lots of different things through it. And so on the channel all the time, I kind of explain the difference between a virtual switch and a bridge. And I give the analogy that if they're going down and buying themselves like a Linksys switch or something, and it's an 8-port switch, you can plug 8 PCs into it. And all 8 PCs can hear each other, but each one knows what traffic is directed to it. And that with a virtual switch, it's the same as that physical switch, except that you have an unlimited number of ports. And the other real physical analogy is if you're driving down the highway and you encounter a bridge connects two landmasses over some water or a gorge or something. And when you cross that bridge, you go to the other side. Lots of other cars can cross with you. And that is a really good concept of how a virtual bridge or switch works in the IT world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I never feel like I'm running out of out of open source software to cover. One thing about the viewers is they ask me for all kinds of videos on things, and sometimes I find one I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, this doesn't look too bad, and I'll jump in and I'll be able to knock it out pretty quick. And sometimes I look at something I'm like, I don't even know what this is trying to do. It just, I have to really stop and kind of put it on my list or go back and read about it. And there's some that I've opened up the browser and said, I'm going to do this one today. And I will start reading, and I will start researching, and I will start looking at their Docker Compose files and their Docker files and things like that. And I'll go, okay, what I'm reading on the documentation and what I'm seeing here don't match. So I'm missing something. So then I'll just finally say, okay, let me just go try to run this thing. I'll set it up in my test system. I'll start it up, and it'll, of course, it just pukes out a ton of errors if it even runs. It just, if it doesn't, sometimes it just kills itself and just says, forget it. And I'll try it for a while, and I'll finally just go, okay, I got to come back to this one. I have limited time like everybody else, right? I work a full-time job. I have a family. I have other things that I have to get done. But I do try to fit in as much as I can for video editing and video recording, which again, my niece is editing for me, but she's still learning. So I have to go back and watch every single thing and send her notes on things to fix and stuff like that. So it's it could be a full-time job. YouTubers that are full-time YouTubers probably spend way more than 40 hours a week making their videos and making things good. I spend 20 hours a week on it easily. And that's writing up show notes and writing up all the instructions and retesting the instructions, as you said. Like, once I write them up, I rerun through it multiple times. And sometimes people will send me something that says, hey, I know this is an older video. I tried it. It didn't work. You've probably gotten that kind of stuff too. And I'll go back and I'll go right through my instructions just like they're there. And I mean, it works fine for me. And I'm like, oh, I hate to tell them it works fine for me. But I also can't explain why they're getting whatever output they're getting without, getting some more detail. And I'll get some who'll finally send me some screenshots and things like that. And for you guys that do want help, I'm going to say one thing from the bottom of my heart. Please learn how to take a screenshot on your computer. Please learn how to gather logs and post them in something like Rocket Chat with the little backtick marks around it, or something that makes it into like more of a code, output, so that we can read it easier. Because if you just post in a big blob of stuff, it's just hard for us to look at. And there's lots of people on my site and Scott and on his site, and they'll help you, but if they can't read it, they're just gonna be like, nope, I'm gonna leave that for somebody else. So Taking a good screenshot is really important. If you use your camera on your phone to do it, just because you can't take a screenshot and post it for some reason, that's okay. But make sure you don't have like a glare from a light that's blocking out half the text. It just makes it really hard for us to help you is all. I love helping people. I know Scott loves helping people. A lot of the guys on my Rocket Chat forum, are great. They jump in and help people, like I said, all the time. And it's been a tremendous journey. I hit 100,000 subscribers this year. I'm a little over that now, which is awesome. Being just focused on open source only, I really truly never thought that would happen. I was kind of surprised when I got to 10,000, to be honest. So hitting 100,000 is pretty amazing. It does take time, like Scott said. Like when I first started, I mean, it was slow going. It took me a while to get up, to where I had 3,000, where I had 10,000, eventually I had 50,000. And then after 50,000, it still took like 2 more years for me to get to 100,000. It's, when it's niche areas like open source, it is harder to get there. But I also appreciate that I'm able to hit more people with information and give them more thoughts about open source. I think it's been a tremendous journey. I love doing this. It's just fun. It's fun for me to do this. If you ask me for something and I tell you it's on my list, I swear to you it's on my list. It might just be one of those things that I just talked about that's on my list that I try to sit down and do it, and I just get frustrated and I have to stop, and I go back 3 months later and try again, and I get frustrated and stop. And sometimes it just keeps getting pushed to the bottom of the list. It's not that I don't want to do it, it's just that I'm not figuring out something about it, and it's taking me time. And sometimes I ask questions to the people who make the project and they help me, and sometimes I ask questions and they just don't have time to answer, and I understand that completely. So if you've asked me for something, I swear to you, I've got this list that's like 6 miles long, and I go digging through it all the time for new topics. But I'm sure Scott feels the same way about not having to run out of topics for 2024.
I think one of the things that, to me, that I can point out is that a lot of times people will kind of chime up and start a discussion in the YouTube comments. And I always try to direct them over to the Rocket Chat, in my case, chat.scottabyte.com.
Yep.
And a lot of them resist going over there, but sometimes it really does require kind of a back and forth dialogue to figure things out. And so a lot of times I'll also start a Jitsi meeting with them, depending on what it happens to be. But to reinforce a little bit about what you said is I cannot tell you how many times that I've sat down and read about a particular piece of software. And normally it's either something I found or something that one of my subscribers says, hey, this is really neat. Can you tell me how it works? Because I haven't gotten it to work. And there's so many really great GitHub projects out there that are great projects and they really do work. But the people that write those softwares, unfortunately, are developers, and they're not people that know how to necessarily document or communicate very well. And I can't tell you how many times that I pick up a piece of software, and sometimes I'll work it for weeks before I actually get the thing to work. And believe it or not, and this is kind of and I know Brian will love this comment here, but hey, I can't tell you how many times I test something 5 times in a row before I actually do the video. And when I sit down to do the video, it flat out doesn't work. I mean, I could have a reel of outtakes. Right. I could have a reel of outtakes that would be like, you can't even believe what I say. I just kind of sit there and go, I'll be talking along in a great stream and I go, okay, now you do this command to do such and such. And all of a sudden it completely explodes on the screen. And I'll say, and it explodes on the screen and absolutely fails completely. This is exactly what you would expect. And of course I edit that out, but that's my way of just kind of tolerating it,
I'll tell you something. My niece that edits for me is great, because I told her, like, I sniff because I have allergies. And, I told her, you need to cut those out. It drives people crazy. It drives me crazy to hear it. I know I do it and I hate it. So I try to be cognizant of it and not do it as much. But she listens for it now. But I also have places where something goes wrong when I'm recording. And I'll sit there. I'll do it with my wife here in the room and it'll go great. and I'll tell her, okay, I'm going to record. So she'll go out. I'll close the door, so I've got silence. I, try to get all the background noise out that I can. I start recording, and I mean, it just goes horribly wrong for some reason. So I start reading the error on the screen. I go look stuff up online. I'm muttering to myself, and I never stop the recording or pause it. It just has this long, big bunch of silence, or me muttering, or cursing to myself under my breath, and I just finally go, I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to cut all this out. And she just, she's good about just like skipping ahead and going, yeah, I see where you finally started talking again, and she'll edit it. But yeah, it never fails. Like you'll do it over and over and over. And the one time you go to record it, like for whatever reason, you forget a step, you forget a setting, or it just your computer decided that time, nope, I'm tired of doing this.
Well, and I've gotten to the point where what I do is I put together segments, because a lot of times I have to switch between completely different screens, and I just have to change completely different systems. Really good example of that is when I did the one that was about the Pixie booting.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that happened during it was just too lengthy to even explain. But bottom line, I made a 20-minute video, and I set a world record because I had like 30 video segments to edit together when I was done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people can't appreciate the fact that what they watched was a nice, clean, smooth, edited 18-minute video, but it actually involved like 2 or 3 hours worth of recording, and 90% of it was cut out.
Yeah. Well, I leave the clock on most of my videos. I record the full screen. So if anybody ever really pays close attention, they'll notice like the date changed in the middle of a segment. The time changes by hours in the middle of a segment, because I will record in segments just like you say. And sometimes I'll record the intro, and then I've got to go do something, and I'll come back and record, the first part and the second part, third part, fourth part, just depending on how many there are. And they'll be hours apart or even days apart sometimes. And, then I send those over to my niece, and she starts, editing the audio to make it sound better and get everything ready. And, she has to put it through the grinder to actually make it turn into even, and, my videos are 30, 45 minutes long. I mean, it's just how it is, because that's how long it takes to cover the information sometimes. But yeah, yeah, I totally know what you mean, that it just never fails. So. And I'm not watching the chat. I can't see it. So if you've got
well, I'm looking at the chat here, and so there was one message here that's kind of interesting. This gentleman by the name of Jim says most home networks can be satisfied with just 100 megabit network. Don't be telling people to go to 2.5 gigabit network, because they could be saving money because they don't need that. So I guess, what's your perspective on that, Brian?
I mean, I think depending on what you're running on your home network, like my home network, it stays busy because I've got multiple cameras that are constantly streaming data to the recording source, and so that one stays pretty busy. Now, if you split into VLANs, maybe it wouldn't need as much on each VLAN, but the nice thing is 2.5 gig switches are coming way down in price. There's a channel called Serve the Home on YouTube, and those guys cover tons, and in the last 5 or 6 months they've covered tons of 2.5 gig switches that are extremely inexpensive, and they really go through them and tell you, like, they'll open them up and say, look, here's the hardware. Oh, look, these five different ones that you can find on Amazon are actually all the same insides. They just have like different branding on them. Here's how they're doing it. They're actually splitting this. It's not really a true 2.5 gig per port or something, but they're coming way down. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Normally 100 megabit for your average home user, 100%, you could probably get away with it and never notice that it's not a gigabit. But as more streaming comes, as you get more people streaming at multiple times, like in my house, my mom streams in her room, the girls stream in the living room, me and my wife are streaming in our room sometimes. Sometimes I'm, recording and running things up to YouTube, or I've got, live meetings going for my work and things like that too. So I don't know. I think 100 megabit would really be getting hurt a little bit by all of that now. Again, for the average person though, maybe it would work. But I'd say for people who are really wanting to start self-hosting, you want to have a little bit more than that. But yeah.
I think that the home network also has definitely evolved. And something that's really interesting to point out is an experience that I had. So I've used a variety of, streaming type devices, smart TVs, Roku's, Fire TV sticks, that type of thing. And I ended up evolving out of the Fire Stick 4K and went to the Fire Stick 4K Max. And I noticed a huge improvement. And what my problem was, believe it or not, is I was actually streaming within the house, and I was doing some 4K off of my NAS. And so I had Plex inside the house, and I was watching Plex content inside the house. And my Wi-Fi was great and all that kind of stuff, but unfortunately, it was running wireless AC, which I thought should be plenty of bandwidth. And in reality, if you look at the specs, it's plenty of bandwidth. But I'll tell you what, when I went out to Wi-Fi 6, the experience was completely different. I mean, there's never any buffering. There's never any changes in quality. I can stream at the original content resolution without any issues. And so there's lots of this kind of stuff within the house that is requiring more bandwidth. If it's not your streaming content, then it's maybe a security camera you're running. And by the way, security cameras, you know, they used to be VGA, and then after that they were HD, you know, 1080p. And honestly, 1080p now looks like really low resolution. I think that the vast majority of people out there are using 2K cameras, and some folks are even using 4K. Unfortunately, most 4K cameras require H.265, which is not very well handled outside of many apps and web browsers and that sort of thing. But they insist that these cameras still have 100 megabit interfaces on them. And when you start getting up into 4K, you got to go to H.265 compression to be able to handle them. So we have all these little technical things that are popping up because of expectations people have. And that's what's driving the improvement or increase in speed. That and the fact that we're starting to see laptops with not only Wi-Fi 6, but Wi-Fi 6E on them. We're starting to see desktops with 2.5 gigabit interfaces. So all these devices are changing. All the new flagship Samsung phones and iPhones are Wi-Fi 6E. Heck, even though it hasn't been ratified, there's a couple of vendors out there that are releasing routers that are Wi-Fi 7, which I think is just a mistake until it's been ratified. But,
Right.
you know,
I think that happens every time, though, right? They always have somebody who jumps on a little bit early, and then you get the the ratified version out there. And usually they're close, but there's occasion where they're not quite on spec for some reason. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So one of the things you said was like a lot of cameras are still 100 megabit on the camera itself, which is true. But like for me, I have 8 cameras, so I mean that's potentially 100 megabit depending on what they're capturing at the time and what it's streaming to the server and stuff like that across my network. So I think there's still 100 megabit is like, again, I'm not the average person, so it's hard for me to say. For the average family, it might still be okay, but I agree. I think the bandwidth requirements are starting to really creep up there, just because everybody's streaming. Everybody's got things inside their house that's constantly sending traffic back and forth. And I think especially like with phones, and as much as people stream out, as much as they stream things in, right? They're self streaming out to YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or whatever the heck they're using at the time. So I think you see a bigger need for that sometimes. Yeah.
So what's your take on internet service provider connections? So we know that there's a potential number of people now in the world that, or even in this country, in the US, who now have increasingly fiber connections. And so they're symmetric. But the vast majority of us still have asymmetric connections. And a really fine example of that is I have a DOCSIS 3.1 cable modem, and it has a 2.5 gigabit connection on it. And I get right around on my gigabit service from my ISP, I get right around 1300 megabits down, but I get 42 megabits up. And you and I really care about that up speed. And it's certainly within the technology, but the idea is that still the ISPs are limiting us in that direction.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that increasingly we're also seeing more and more internet service providers, such as T-Mobile Home Internet, that are providing, or even Starlink, who are providing double NAT or CG-NAT. And of course, that limits the ability to self-host because you don't have a dedicated WAN address. So I like to hear your perspective on that asymmetric ISP as well as the double NAT situation. And do you think this will improve in 2024?
I do. So I'm on asymmetric also. I'm on a cable modem. It's currently 500 gig or 500 meg down, and I think it's 20 meg up is about what I get. Maybe usually around 28 maybe. And I always get more than 500. It's almost 600 in fact a lot of times on my speed tests. But you know the company I'm with is great. It's Spectrum. And honestly, when I moved to the town that I'm in Del Rio, Texas, it was 50 was the max you could get. 50 megabits down, period. Within a year, they had doubled that. And within another year, they had doubled that. And at this point now, they've more than doubled that. So I'm at 500 and something. And I actually had a bunch of the hardware that I used to have over my living room moved in here. And it's on a shelf over here on my wall where like my modem, router, all that stuff is at. And when I had it done, I had the cable company send somebody out to run the cable that I needed. And while he was here, he says, "Oh, hey, you've got an older modem. Do you want me to go ahead and switch that out and we can get rid of this other piece of equipment we've got out here in this box?" And he says, "You're going to need this anyways because we're going to be switching everybody to gig up, gig down." I said, "When?" He's like, "Well, probably early next year." So, I mean, it's coming. And he said, "It's not going to be a price change. It's just something they're doing." So Spectrum, honestly, I mean, I don't know about everybody, but my experience with Spectrum has been really good so far. They've just been knocking it out of the park. So they're going to, gig up, gig down, which is great. I think even, with the asymmetric, yeah, I worry sometimes about my bandwidth, but for what I'm hosting and what I'm trying to do, it's plenty, right? Like 29 megabit is, plenty. I don't stream out of the house very often. Once in a while when we go, out of town, I'll load up Jellyfin over the VPN and stream something, but it does definitely take longer and it does get downscaled, a decent bit just because of what I'm streaming and stuff. But it's not like I'm doing that for 10,000 people or anything. It's just us. But I think 2024 is hopefully going to see a pretty good increase in that. I don't know if the government's going to get involved in it or not. There's been this constant kind of back and forth between should the government be overseeing internet speeds just like they do telephones and things like that, or should it not be that and it's still private business? And this battle kind of goes back and forth in the U.S. So I would love to see it. I mean, I know like Japan, I believe Japan is like light years ahead of us on internet speeds, and I don't think it costs anywhere near as much as it does here in the U.S. That's just the system of capitalism that says, hey, I've got something you want, so you're going to pay me for it, and you're going to pay as much as I ask you to. And, really, the cable companies are one of the last monopoly type systems, right? I have no other choice in the town that I'm in. Spectrum is it. There might be somebody else who offers internet service, but is so much worse and slow that it's truly not an actual option. It's not like a competitive option. So I believe they call those oligopolies because they all have agreements not to go into each other's territory, and that keeps them the top dog, right? So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, for 24, I'm hoping that we're going to see those go up everywhere because yeah, I'd love to be able to serve everything from the house, and I think it will. The reason he gave for the gig up gig down change was because they said, well, so many people are streaming out of their homes because they're doing streaming Facebook and FaceTime meetings, and they're doing all kinds of online meetings and they're in stuff like that, and they need that extra bandwidth. So maybe they're coming around.
I noticed that Michael out here in the chat kind of started a little bit of a discussion, and he wants to know what our perspective is on using IPv6 implementation on the LAN. I personally do IPv6 on my local main LAN and actually one of my VLANs. And I have hosted over IPv6. It's just that when I monitored my statistics, there were not very many people that were connecting to me via IPv6. I mean, clearly we all need to be going there. And if you're in certainly in Western Europe, they're out of IPv4 addresses, and so we're going to see a lot more IPv6 going on over there in other countries before we'll necessarily see it here. I mean, we should have been there a long time ago. I've got a couple videos, I think, on IPv6, and I've certainly got a few documents on my website on IPv6. But what's your perspective there?
So I don't use IPv6 on my network right now, but I also don't use domain names on my network for the most part. I use IPv4 because I just remember all the IP addresses of my servers for the most part. But I also use tools that help me with that a little bit. So IPv6 is a possibility. I did try to set up IPv6 at one point for kind of coming from the outside into my home just to see how it worked, and it did fine. It was just something for me to try out, though. I didn't keep it set up or anything like that, and that was a couple years ago. I was trying to understand it and learn it, and it is. I'm just happy that I learned IPv4. Honestly, sometimes I'm still not sure I really know it all that well, but IPv6 is definitely different, and it's not as complicated as it seems when you first look at it, for sure. And your video was really, really great about how, explaining how it functions and the differences between the local and the public and the loopback and things like that. Another one is Mark50, his channel. He also did a really good video breaking down IPv6. So if you guys are not familiar with it or not real sure about it yet, there's Scott's got a great one, and then supplement that one with one Mark50, and you'll walk away feeling like you're an expert on it. Honestly, it's really not that bad, but getting a public IPv6, I think, still depends on your ISP here in the States. I don't know that you can always get one, and sometimes it's like an extra charge, but some places you can get it. You just need to go turn on the little checkbox in your router to make sure it's doing IPv6 and stuff like that, and it depends on what you're using for the software there. Mine does it. My router actually does assign IPv6 addresses to everything. I totally ignore it, but it gives it to them, if I have it turned on the machine. So it's an option for me. It's just not something I've adopted yet. But you're right. I do think it's something we should be adopting more, and it's something I should probably be adopting more. But at the same time, I feel like it's one of those things where they're finally just going to have to go, all right, on January 1st, 2025, IP4 is not going to work anymore. And that's where I'll actually go, okay, I got to get this done. But I don't think that's going to happen for a while.
I think that IPv6, the best way to understand IPv6 is in the United States, we typically speak, somebody that speaks three languages is trilingual. Somebody who speaks two languages is bilingual. Somebody that speaks one language is American.
That's right.
Okay. And so
If that.
IPv4 and IPv6 don't talk to each other. And so they're like two different languages, and they're discrete on the network. You can run IPv4 and IPv6. Something that people don't readily recognize out there is that all the mainstream operating systems that we run, whatever distro of Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, all have IPv6 built into them, and it's enabled by default. So the thing you need is to support IPv6 is, first of all, your ISP needs to be using it, and most ISPs are. In fact, the first place that we saw IPv6 being used was by cell phone provider networks. That was the first place that they popped up. But you really only have to turn on an IPv6 prefix allocation, and you have to understand how your ISP sets up that prefix allocation, whether it's 64-bit, 54, 56. Some of them do some pretty odd stuff. And then once you turn that on, then you have to pick your LAN or your VLAN and then enable it on that LAN and VLAN. And that's kind of how it works. It's really neat the way it works. And one really key difference between IPv6 and IPv4 is that it's not broadcast based like IPv4 is. So it's not chatty. And I just think it's really amazing that your ISP gives you one WAN address for your use, And so we do cute things like, you know, uh, reverse proxy in order to be able to handle hosting multiple services on that one WAN address. Uh, whereas your ISP gives each person roughly something like 18 trillion
Yeah, I
addresses.
was about to say
You know,
that's the
and
funniest
it's
thing
like
about it, right? We work our
it's like
butts off to
18
make
trillion, and they said, won't they
traffic come
run out of
through.
it? And I said, you just have no idea how big that address space is. It's crazy
Yeah,
big. I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of like the difference between the maximum file size in FAT32 versus ZFS.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. I was messing with Nginx Proxy Manager today, in fact, because it was not giving me a Let's Encrypt certificate for something I was trying, and it was something stuck, and I had to go and mess with it and get it to work, and I probably messed with it for like 45 minutes. And honestly, if I'd have been using IPv6, I would not have even needed it. It would have just I would have just said, okay, here's the IPv6 address of that machine, and that should map to this name, and that would have been it. I'd have been done with it. It's one of those things that, yeah, it's incredible how many devices you could run in just your space that your ISP gives you. I mean, the world's number of devices you could run in just the space that your ISP gives you, I imagine, on IPv6. Um,
Yep.
and we still insist on using that single address that they still want to change on us occasionally if you don't pay for a static IP, and then figuring out all these weird, crazy ways to make things route around the network. So yeah, it is
So,
one that maybe I should tackle a little bit more in 2024. I can't say that I will, but I should.
realize that Nginx Proxy Manager, we think about it as a way to base a whole bunch of services using like typically DNS CNAME records behind our one WAN address.
Yep.
But if you really dig into that software, it actually has IPv6 support. And you're going to sit there and go, what? Why would it have IPv6 support? And that's because Nginx Proxy Manager does a second feature besides just putting a whole bunch of services. It does that business with all of the self-signed certificate management.
Yep.
And so I was curious and I played around, but I haven't found anything online in the net. And I played around with it, been kind of unsuccessful so far. But I was wondering if I could get it to manage my certificates for IPv6 services. Because here's the deal. If we do all go to IPv6, and so then we're not using reverse proxy, and we have all these servers sitting down in our system, and how are those services going to use certificates? Well, the immediate answer is each and every service instance is going to have its certificate on its web server installed. Well, that's kind of a management nightmare because you don't have now one place to go. You got to go to all these separate places to manage that.
That's
And
right.
so Nginx Proxy Manager brings that real great feature to the table, and we all want things to be as easy as possible, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to go manage the certificates on all my different services that I run, even if they're, it's 12, 15 things on a Docker host, right? But I still wouldn't want to have to go mess with each one individually. That is the nice thing about like a proxy manager. It makes it really easy. So yeah, somebody just needs to create Nginx certificate manager and let it
That's
be
right.
IPv6
That's right.
based.
There needs to be something like that that handles that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think yeah. I should look into IPv6 more in 24, but I should also stop eating bacon. But I'm probably not going to stop eating bacon.
So I see Calvin down here said that he doesn't think that Verizon Fios is IPv6 compliant. And he says, I know Frontier is not IPv6 compliant. I'm a little surprised by that. So I'm not entirely sure there. I know that Spectrum is, and I know that Xfinity Comcast is because that's what I'm using. But I'd be kind of surprised if they weren't. If you're running the ISP's router, and so in the case of Fios, the thing is usually the router is provided by Verizon, and it's a real pain to provide your own router. More than likely at the router level in premise, they have it turned off for you, but it doesn't mean that they're not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what it was when I first looked into it. Is we had a request to have it turned on. When I lived in Lubbock, I think with Suddenlink for some reason you had a request to have it turned on if you wanted it. But when I came here with Spectrum, I noticed it was just on. I was like, oh hey, they already give me an address, so it was kind of easy to look up on my account actually and see it. I believe is where I found it that time where I was messing with it. But it's yeah, it's not bad. It's just again wrapping your head around doing it a little bit different from what you're used to now, knowing some of the rules about how they contract your address depending on how many zeros are all together, things like that, right? You just have to kind of understand how to look at those things. And again, your video and One Mark 50's video really cover those things so well that it makes it a lot easier to understand. And having that kind of written down for yourself on a cheat sheet for a while is probably a great idea too. But yeah, the V6 stuff, like, yeah, I know some providers for sure, ISPs, you have to call them, request it, that kind of thing. I don't think it's because they want to charge you more. I just don't think that they initially thought, hey, we should just turn this on for everybody for some reason. Maybe they weren't ready for it. But I mean, I've worked in software now since, I mean, actually like my job since 2011. And even halfway through that 2016, the company I worked for was still telling people, turn off IPv6, that's causing your problem. And I'm like, that shouldn't be our answer. Like that, why is that our answer still today? Like even though I didn't really know IPv6 that well, I kind of felt like, look, this has been around a long time. Like, why is this still our answer to
Yeah.
people? That's not good. So yeah.
So on my scottabyte.com web server, I have some documents over there. And if you dig down into the documents section, which is a little dated by now, it's a couple of years old, but this stuff is not dated in what it provides. I have a 3-part series that I created, and there are 3 PDFs you can download, and they're entitled "The Joys of IPv6 Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3."
Nice. That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was kind of fun. But
Scott,
yeah,
this has been a lot of fun. I know we're at the end of the year, so I wanted to kind of go out with a bang. But I do want to say for everybody that's already crossed over the midnight time frame, if you're watching us, I'm sorry you didn't have something better to do on New Year's Eve. But we appreciate you being here. But yeah, have a happy New Year. Have a safe New Year. We're gonna hit New Year here in about 7.5 hours, so I'll be asleep. That's how I celebrate New Year's. I just sleep now. I was a police officer for 10 years, and I had to sit up through New Year's for a long time. And best thing you could do in the United States, because everybody has a gun and they want to shoot them off in the air, is go find a bridge to get under till that's done, and then you can go patrol again. But be careful. Have a great, safe New Year. And Scott, definitely have a good New Year. And I'm excited for 2024.
Well, that's great, Brian. This has been great doing this. And I just want to encourage everybody, if you're trying something, you're trying to get some self-hosting working and it's frustrating at first, try again. Don't give up. We've got resources out there. Certainly come out to the Rocket Chat that Brian hosts, as well as my Rocket Chat. And we're more than happy to answer your questions. And if we're not out there to answer them, there are a lot of really great people that are out there that will be more than happy to get in and just kind of help you along. I think the bottom line is to be patient. And this stuff is getting easier and easier over time. 10 years ago, this might have been really, really difficult. And heck, just to kind of put things in perspective, I've been in IT for 40 years now. And so I've learned a lot. I mean, I started way back. I mean, my very first computer at the office was an LSI 1102 from Digital Equipment Corporation. And my first desktop machine was running CPM 8086.
Nice. That's
So,
awesome.
we've come a long way since then. And the advantage to having been in IT all that period of time is that I've had an opportunity to learn so many things and had an opportunity to test so many things. I mean, TCP/IP was the 6th networking protocol I learned, and the very last one that I learned, because I learned 5 of them before that.
That is awesome. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, if you're trying to do one of these things that we've shown, especially as they get older, keep in mind that our documentation, I don't go update it all the time. It's hard to keep that up to date. It's hard to do update videos, but we try. But if you're having a trouble, if it's not turned out the same way, definitely go look at the actual official docs, because that's where I start. I'm sure that's where Scott starts. I mean, when I go look at something, the first thing I do is look, okay, where is their documentation? Do they tell me how to do this myself? If they don't, then sometimes I'm writing it myself. But if they do, I really go heavily from their documentation at the time on how to do it. So I always try to make sure, point you back to the official docs if it's not working. Double check that it kind of matches what you're doing with our instructions. And if it is and you're still having problems, definitely jump onto the Rocket chats, ask us. YouTube comments is the absolute worst place for a conversation.
Yep.
It's not meant for conversation. It's meant for a quick comment and reply, and really that's it. So we're always going to point you to the Rocket Chat servers, because it is much easier to have those conversations, and much more convenient for us, for one thing, just because it makes it easier for us to get some formatting around the things you're telling us. And YouTube has rules around what characters you can put in things, and it's kind of crazy. And sometimes we need to put special characters in there that will actually help you get something done, and it just won't let us. So yeah, definitely Rocket Chat's
And
the way
you
to go.
can't cut and paste screenshots.
You
And
sure can't.
screenshots
Yeah.
are everything, and code segments are everything, both for us to be able to help you and also for you to be able to show us exactly what's going wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, all right, Scott, I appreciate it.
All right.
Have a
It
happy
was
new year,
fantastic.
everybody. Have a happy new
Happy New
year.
Year.
We'll see y'all in 2024.
Absolutely.
All right, Scott, I think we are off.